Hello and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to this session of inspiring conversation. And do I have a treat for you? Oh, yes, I do. So let's go to why inspiring conversations, go through that. It's all about creating conversations that really matter. We are diving into ways to connect deeply, break down barriers, and build moments that inspire trust and growth, whether it's with your team, at work, or in your everyday chats. We will bring more positivity, realness, and impact into every conversation. So, as I have been saying most of the time, if you take this much of the conversation that I'm having with the people, that's great. And my guest today is from the US, and she wrote this book about the mentorship edge. And we are going to talk about that because the topic today is really important because we have to get the young people with us. And Deborah Heiser, hello and good morning.
Hello, thank you for having me on. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, should I say, I'm glad you are finally on the chat because we were programmed to have this chat
I
14 days
know,
ago, but
I know.
somehow we both managed to like mix the signals and time zones and whatnot. So maybe we should have talked to our mentors about time zones.
Maybe, yeah. But I
So
love that this is
welcome.
2.0, as you said.
Well, we need to like because I had to talk to myself for like with myself for 25 minutes last
Oh
time
no, I'm so
because
sorry.
well, I consider it as a training session because then I get more relaxed about being alone in front of the camera.
Well, I
So
love how you are so diplomatic about that. So thank you for having me
well,
on.
it's like somebody said, SHIT happens. So
Yeah,
like we just have to live and move forward. So we are going to talk about mentorship and
yeah,
how that can unlock growth through dynamic relationships.
yeah.
But we can't start without saying, "Oh, hello, who's Deborah Heiser, and why am I talking to Deborah Heiser?" So give us a little bit about who you are and how you stepped into the world of mentorship and why is it important.
Oh gosh, it's so important. I'll tell you, I'm an applied developmental psychologist, and I come to this topic of mentorship from a theoretical perspective in our development. We are built to mentor. So most people think of mentorship as, a transactional or a relationship that happens, right? Or that you are put into. But really, it's a mentor focused um, developmental milestone that we reach in midlife, that we're built to want to do this. And so I come to it from a research background and someone who's really looked at it from a perspective of emotion and how we're really built to want to do this in our lives.
So but if we put it in context, are our parents, are they our first mentors that we meet? Because you were
That's
talking
a
about
funny
yeah.
That's a funny, not funny, but it's a good question. So there's some, talk about that in two different ways. Some people will say that we are generative. That's the developmental milestone. And having children is being generative. But I often say, put a little distance. You are expected as part of being a parent to guide your children. But you are not if you're a grandparent. You are not if you're an aunt or an uncle or a cousin or somebody else or outside. But as parents, that's kind of part of our job. We're not supposed to just love. Love comes with guiding them and getting them to their places. So I usually don't count that as formal mentoring. And some parents aren't cut out for it either. So I say
Mm.
that, in fact, it is not, but other people might say it is. And so it's up to the listener to determine what you think.
Yeah, because when I'm thinking about parenting and stuff, because uh, my father was an alcoholic, like you say, not everybody is, but he was loving. He didn't express it. I had to go outside of the family to hear that he was proud of me and stuff. But then I get to choose the path. Do I want to be like him, or like how, you make up your own stuff based on what you learn, maybe. So
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
before we dive really into, I want to, if people have just come in, like, welcome, and as usual, you can participate. Put your chat on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, and then maybe we can have the questions for Deborah if you have interesting questions, because then we will put them up on the screen. So, but why is it that when you were on your path, like you said something, like your sentence about that you are a digga psychologist. That was the only
Uh-huh.
thing I remember.
Okay.
That was the only thing I remember. So what led you?
Let me, okay, I'll give you
Yeah,
the full
so
story. I gave you like the
so,
Reader's
so
Digest version.
yeah, so start with the long word psychologist, and then or
Sure.
psychology, and then like why, how happened, why did you go into this field, like why, what inspired you in this direction? Because this is, as a social educator, this is really something that we need to think about.
So my story is is kind of long, and it's a lot like a lot of people's story. I didn't come out and say, "Hey, I want to be an applied developmental psychologist and work with older adults." That never entered my mind until when I was in my early, I think I was 20 or so, I went to visit my grandmother down in Florida in the United States. And she was the fun grandma. She was the grandma that I could go down and visit her and never needed to bring clothes. I just had to bring shoes and a toothbrush, and I was ready to go because she had amazing clothes and she had fabulous friends, and it was just a lot of fun. So one time I went down to visit her and she was disheveled, grouchy, and not herself. So I said to somebody who was she lived in a very nice assisted living, or it was an independent living facility. And I said to somebody, "There's something wrong with my grandma." And they said, "Don't worry, we'll fix her." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "Well, she's taking a medication that is for her COPD, which was a breathing difficulty that she had, and it made her depressed. She's taking the wrong medicine. We're going to have to adjust it." So I was like, "Okay, I don't know quite what you're talking about, but fine." They said, "When you come back next, she'll be back to herself." So I came back again and she was back to herself and even better. At this point, she had a boyfriend. Like, she was like great again. So I was like, "That's it. Sold. I am going to be a grandma fixer." I don't know what that means, but I'm going to be a grandma fixer. And so that was the first step towards this, that I got to see that there were people who could bring a person back to their original personality that was so fabulous and amazing, and they could be back to their regular lives that were fulfilling and wonderful. So I took the long road to my undergraduate degree and switched majors and got a psychology degree. And then I went to work in a psych hospital on an aging unit on all the things no one wants to have or get when they get older. And then became a researcher after graduate school in a large organization, and ran the research department and studied again everything no one wants to have or get when they get older. But that's what I thought getting older was. I thought that getting older was getting depressed and making sure that we have medication. So when you get depressed, you can take a medicine and you'll be better, or get talk therapy and get better, and frailty and Alzheimer's disease, all these things that scare us. I will tell you, I was no one you wanted to talk to at a cocktail party. I scared
Oh,
people
here comes
away.
Deborah.
Yeah, exactly. The most boring, scary person to talk to. So I was at a dinner party thinking everyone was going to be so excited to hear all about this stuff I was working on because I was so proud of myself. I had a book coming out on end of life. I had, like all this stuff that I was prepared to tell everybody about and be like, look at me. And so I sat down, everybody told what they did, and I got to me. And I said, oh, I do all this research in aging on frailty and depression and blah, blah, blah. The place was silent. And the guy across from me said, what do we have to look forward to? And I was stumped. I was like, what do you mean? And it was like an epiphany for me that I said, I need to look at what I want to look forward to also. Like, what is it that we look forward to? So I went back to the research that's out there, and there was tons, decades of research on everything that we have to look forward to as we get older. And it just wasn't making it out into the media. There was tons of stuff in the media on Alzheimer's disease, frailty, on all these scary things. And so when I pivoted, I really stuck to the midlife stage called generativity. That is a stage that was posited by Erik Erikson. And in that stage, we're built to want to give back to others. And that to me, I said, wow, why would we want to give back to others? Like most young people, I thought, well, that's counterintuitive to how things work. How would that make us happier? And so I was looking at it, and our emotional trajectory only goes up. We get happier as we get older. All these wonderful things, even though our physical trajectory has a steep incline and a slow, steady decline, we're happier. And so I was like, okay, I've got to learn about this. And one of the aspects of the way that we give back is mentoring. So we can either engage in mentoring, volunteering, or philanthropy. But not everybody can put their name on a building. Not everybody is aligned with the volunteering. Like I could go be a docent in a zoo or something like that. But not all of us are aligned with that. When with mentoring, you're generating a piece of you out into the world and to somebody else who then carries that. And I thought, ooh, that's powerful. I want to know more about that. And I started to dig in, and I found that so many people, the top 1% of those in their fields, were saying, I can't find a mentee. They were so separated from everybody. And I thought, oh my gosh, we're burning down libraries. Every time a person can't give back their expertise, it's like burning down a library. And I thought, oh my gosh, our most precious natural resources that we have in this world are not being utilized. So I realized that the main problem that we had was that we had a disconnect, and connection is such a key for us that we really need that. Mentees are screaming out for mentors, and mentors are sort of quietly saying, I'm stuck here alone with all my information and I have no one to give it to. So at that point, we decided to start to found, myself with a small group of people, we founded the Mentor Project to bring top 1% leaders in their fields to mentor students around the world for free. And it took off. So that's the long story about how all of this sort of happened in just an organic way.
Well, and as Rab Bassi says, thank you, Rab, for being with us. Like he says, love the pay forward to be happier. Totally resonates with how wisdom can be shared, and that is like, why should we disrespect your experience? I'm not talking, because when we were talking together before we started, we were talking about this. Is it better to, like, parenting? Like, that's the only thing I know, or maybe like, and when I was working a youth club and the staff members, I said, why don't you experience, do stuff, and then afterwards we can talk about, was it the right stuff or was it the negative stuff? Like, what happens? Did something shift? Or like, how can we get the, like, so how can we value, like, the value in this, as you say? Because we don't, because I can say, like, I have been in a burnout, but it's never
Yeah.
the same as like, how can we, because the elderly, okay, or people at our age, like, we want to give back, as you say. So how is it that, like, people come to you and you're not a coach, or you are not a parent, as you were saying?
So, I'll do a couple of things. I love that question. I'm going to define mentoring for you because
Yeah,
I will say that the term is so loosely used. People
yeah,
use it differently everywhere. And the term got hijacked by corporate America. So people associate mentoring with just work. That
yeah.
you have to have a degree. If I don't have a degree, I'm not a mentor. If I don't have a particular skill, I'm not a mentor. It really makes the imposter syndrome for people kick in. What people don't realize is that we are mentoring all the time. We just don't realize it. Religion has been passed down for centuries. That's mentorship. You didn't wake up one day and say, "Oh, new religion." That's not
Yeah.
how it works. Every holiday, every value, every tradition that you have didn't start with you. It started with getting passed down. There's such power in grandmas and grandpas out there that it's unbelievable. They're usually the ones who are the holders of that familial wisdom, value, tradition, culture, and that gets passed down. But we don't think about it. We enter our holiday traditions and smell the food and see what is expected every time, or you enter your house of worship and you take it for granted. But that isn't new. That has been a form of mentorship that's been passed down. So if we look at mentorship in the way that it really is, as a form of generativity, something that we're built to do, just like walking and talking, it starts with someone who is being generative, who says, I have something that I want to give back. So all of us who've gotten to the midlife point in our lives, we've been accumulating like we're supposed to, taking stuff in, learning, checking the boxes. By the time you hit midlife, you're you're full. You're like, I need to open the lid of my Tupperware and let some stuff out. And we have that need because we want to feel relevant. We want to feel like we matter. We want to feel like we have a footprint in the ground on this earth, and that we're useful. So when we hit that stage, we need somebody who wants to give something back. Now, if you're not ready to give something back, you are not ready to be a mentor, right? So it has to be that you're ready to give something back, and that something can be values, it can be accounting, it can be whatever it is. And then there has to be somebody who wants to catch that information, and that's a mentee. So generativity requires that you're generating something out, but somebody has to want it. So if you said to me, "Hey, I want to give you some mentorship in, car mechanics," and I was like, "I don't want to learn that. I don't want that mentorship." Mentoring isn't happening. Okay, it's just done. It's not
Mm-hmm.
bad,
Mm-hmm.
not good. It's just not mentoring. The next thing you need is an intrinsic motivator. You have to want to give back, and I have to want to receive. If you're getting paid to mentor, you're not a mentor. You're a coach, you're an advisor, you're something else, which does not devalue that something else. You're just not a mentor. So if I were to say to you, "Hey, would you like to go volunteer time at a soup kitchen, giving out food and beverage to hungry, thirsty people?" You might say, "Yeah, I feel good if I do that. I'd like that. Sign me up." You get ready to go, you're driving in your car, and I say, "Hey, instead of going there, turn left and go donate your time at the coffee shop." And that has a whole different feel. That you expect to get paid there. You're going to go volunteer and give stuff out at the cash register while everybody else is getting paid. That's often how it is in the workplace, where people feel like if I'm supposed to be mentoring and I'm not, there's going to be some devaluation there, or I want to get paid for it. That's not mentoring. Likewise, if you feel like I'm going to get an extra bonus from my performance evaluation if someone finds out that I'm being mentored, that's not intrinsically motivated. You also have to have a meaningful connection. You have to like me and I have to like you. If that's not there, it's just not mentoring. So some people feel like they have to sort of fake a relationship, or somebody will think that, there's a failure in it, but there's no failure in mentorship. There's just mentorship or not mentorship. That's it. So the next thing is trust. if I say, hey, I'm going to mentor you, and then I think that you're going to steal my idea and run away with it, I'm not going to be mentoring you. Likewise, if you say, hey, I'm not going to tell her what I don't know or I need guidance in because I feel like she's going to judge me in some way or throw me under the bus or won't give me a promotion or something like that, that's not mentorship then. You have to have that trust component. And finally, you need a goal. So if you are just chit-chatting or just going through the flow and there isn't a goal, then it's not mentoring. So mentoring can be a one-off goal. I could say to you, hey, I'm starting this new job. I want the lay of the land. Can you tell me what I can expect or what each department is? And then we could be done. Or we could have something where it's opening the door and that goal shifts and changes over time as we have a long-term mentoring relationship. So if you take just one of those ingredients out, it's the same as making brownies and leaving the sugar out. It'll look like mentoring, but it won't taste like it. So we have a lot of one item or more than one item components missing in mentoring programs that are out there. So it looks like it, but it's not really mentoring.
And when you're speaking like this or talking about it, I think like you teach this, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
And how is that in the field of psychology, or is it like how do you teach mentorship? Because it's something, because I one of my questions were like, I was thinking about when you get uh, mentors often share wisdom from their own experience.
Yeah.
Like, as you say, while coaches, they get paid and they ask questions to unlock answers and la la la. So how, and at the dinner party, like everybody, if I say, oh, I had this funny, I walked into a light pole the other day, and then all
Well,
of a
that's
sudden, 10 people, they have walked into a light pole. Like, they have the similar like experience. But how do you teach it without being so they have to realize, because maybe it is a generational thing, as I have heard, that people today, they don't want to volunteer because what's in it for me is not money.
I'm going to give you an example. What you tell me is exactly true. A lot of people say that, but it's the time old story of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge. He
Yeah,
was a guy who was checking all the boxes, and on paper he looked so successful. He's what most of us would say, "Ooh, I want to have that." He was a self-made guy. He lived in a mansion. He had servants taking care of all of his needs. On paper, he looked great, but he was miserable. It wasn't until he started giving back that he felt joy. And that's exactly how it is with us. So sometimes it takes us a little longer to kick into that than others, right? So when you're 20, you're not expected to be at that stage. You're expected to be taking your information in. By midlife, though, that's when most of us, and it's kind of like a baby learning to walk or talk, right? Some
yeah.
do it really early and some do it later. Does it mean that that person that did it early is going to be an Olympic athlete? No, it all washes out in the end. And the same with our emotional. If we're talking about emotional life stages, those are the same as our physical ones. There's flexibility in when we are going to hit those stages and when they kick in. So that's the same with generativity, which encompasses mentorship and our desire to give back.
So as Rap, he is now asking, like, is mentoring driven by a request of a mentee about what they want to learn, or by the mentor offering a skill to teach? Like,
Mhm.
I will point out to you, Rap, he is a very wise guy. He lives in the UK, and I think you two would be like a good match on LinkedIn. So, but what do you think about this question?
That's a fabulous question. And it can go either way. However, it's always driven by the mentor.
Okay, yeah,
So, meaning that the mentor has the knowledge. So, a mentee could say, hey, I see you have that knowledge. I'd like some of that, right? I'd like some of that wisdom. I'd like some of what you have. Can I pick your brain? Can you give me some advice? Can you guide me in this? Then it's driven by the mentee, but you're always getting it from the mentor. Now, the way that we do it, say with the mentor project, is we have out all of the mentor's skills and everything that they are expert in. And then a mentee, so that person is saying, here's what I have to offer. Who wants it? So you can go in either direction, but I caution people to, when you are doing it mentee to mentor, that you are saying, I am going to find someone, I'm going to talk to somebody and say, can I get some advice? That is your first entree into seeing if it could lead to mentorship. It does not mean that when you say, hey, I'd like to get some mentorship from you, that's how it works. Mentorship is kind of like making a friend in a way. You could have a million people that pass by you and they're not all your friend. And you don't go up to the first person that you see that, says, hey, how are you? You don't say, hi, want to be my friend? They say you're a weirdo. The same thing happens with mentorship. If somebody says, hey, you want to be my mentor? It's like, ooh, this sounds like an arranged marriage. I back off, give me a little space. And so it has that same feel. And a lot of us feel, because it's presented to us in a transactional way, that we could just go and say, hey, you have something I'd like. Can I have it? And it comes off as that same kind of weird way it would be if you said, hi, I want to be my friend, to somebody that you just meet on the street.
Rap has an extra, like, how can you connect with those half your age whose work is about instant gratification? Like, but that is, hasn't it always been there?
No, but here's the thing. Don't burden yourself and think. I hear people that say, be the inspirational mentor. What do I have to do? Tap dance? Like, it is not your job as the mentor to be an inspiring person who is elevating the next person. That is an extrinsic motivator that's put on you, that you have to do all kinds of song and dance to inspire the person. That person has to want it. If they're saying, I don't want it, I want instant gratification, it's not mentoring. Cut it loose and say, you know what? This isn't the right one. We do not have to live in a non-mentoring relationship, calling it mentorship and feeling icky about it. So I would say, if somebody's saying, I want something right now, give it to me. That sounds to me like it's a holdup. It's a stick up. Hey, give me all your money. It's like, give me all your knowledge. That isn't mentorship.
I have when you were talking about this, and because I met this incredible lady, she was in her 90s, came to Iceland, and then she started talking about the Second World War, where she was a toddler, like she was 5, 6 years old. And she was talking about that she had this thing growing up on a farm, and her brother had to go, and he was a pilot in the Royal Air Force. And whenever he took off on a mission, then he would fly over the house. That's what she said. And so she ran out every time she heard a plane over the farm to wave.
Oh,
and then she was doing this once,
so
waving. And then it was a bloody Spitfire, like it was a Nazi. And she had to throw herself off the road. And I was just like, no. Because I had only experienced this through the television, through the movies, and talk. So I was just like, wow. And the impact that this lady had on me was just, I was just like goosebumps, because that was, and she almost, I almost, when you are fond of like the Beatles or the Beatlemania, I just had to touch her, like in a way, like, oh, and you are still alive. Like, that to me was an epiphany. I'm sitting here next to a person who is just telling stories, which hopefully I will never have to endure.
Yeah, I know.
Never, ever. And I was so amazed. So this is something that we have to, because I think about, when I was growing up, my father and mother, they were born in the 25. My mother was born in 1925. My father was born in 1929. And I was born in 1967. So the age gap was humongous. And they almost came out of the mud cabins or whatever they lived in. And everything was just and now with my own kids, you have TikTok, Snapchat, and you can't say this, you can't say okay if you send a what aubergine on the text, like you all hell breaks loose, because that
Yeah.
is something different. It's not this like what you think. It's for me, it's an aubergine, but that's definitely what not it like. That's a whole nother discussion. So tapping into these story or sitting by people and hearing those stories, that was for me, it was mentoring that you
Oh,
can.
absolutely. And you know how you described that? Every time mentoring is an emotional
Yeah.
thing, right? And you said I got chills when you spoke about it, and when you were talking about it, I felt it. It's emotional. We often describe it as transactional. Transactional is not emotional. This is the way you described that is emotional. That's why culture, traditions, values, all of those things are emotional things that we pass down as through mentorship, but we often don't think of it that way. What you just had was a sort of a cultural transfer of information, an emotional transfer. That is mentorship. That does happen in the workplace, but we often keep shifting back and think it has to be some kind of an actual, I am giving you something right here, and it's tangible in some way that will lead you to X outcome. And, sometimes the outcome is abstract. The outcome for you is a shift in how you think. And that's why people think of mentorship in terms of workplace, because you could say, well, I got a raise. Well, I got a promotion. Well, I got something else. But it's the internal emotion that is really the shift. And oftentimes that's abstract.
So as he has a question, like Rap has. Sorry, my phone was driving my like I had forgotten to put it on silent. So he asked, like, should you lay out a verbal contract in mentoring to ensure confidentiality or and respect at all time, or is this a like? But for
I'm going to
me,
say
it
no.
yeah, yeah.
And
I was
just
there also too.
here's why. Because if you need that contract with confidentiality, it's assuming that you don't trust that person because you think that they might throw you under the bus some way or put your information out there in some way. Coaching is very much like that. We need coaches. Coaches have us in mind, and there's usually a contract and a specific goal in mind. Mentoring, as we just described, is more of an emotional thing. And you know that you don't set up a contract with your friend. You don't say, hey, Jim, let's sit down and write up a contract on what our friendship is going to look like. And really, mentorship has that same feel to it, that we are emotionally connected in a meaningful way with that person. And our goal is to help that person to get to some new place. Like that woman that you talked to who got you to a new way of thinking and feeling, and that got incorporated into you. But that is really where we're going. So we need coaches and we need mentors, but mentors don't need that same formality that coaches have.
But I also think about the lady when she gave me the chills, is that
Yeah.
I can't ignore that she had experienced that. And
Yeah.
sometimes we this or we just like, oh, whatever, this feeling of, I'm telling you, because saying stuff like, okay, I granted that you do this to your children and say, like, well, I did this when I was back in the days, and they
Yeah.
just like, yeah, yeah, but you can't, they, like, everybody has to they have to live stuff to talk about stuff, like
Yeah,
you can't.
especially culture and values and all of that, absolutely.
Yeah, and you can't prepare your kids for life. You can give them values, norms, or whatever, but then they have to experience. But you can't be on the sideline, or as I was mentioning to you before, we talked like about the Danes talking about the curling parents, where they try to sweep like everything in front of the kid, so they won't get any hurdles, and they have to sweep stuff. Hearing about people in Denmark, 18-year-olds going for a job interview with their parents.
Oh,
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, that I was just like, what? That
Mm.
is horrible. That is nothing. How can you do that? Because I have done loads of stuff that, like, I would say, been there, done that. I will never do it. And then you can exchange
I
these
I think
things.
I think for me personally, I would say try to remove mentorship from parenting. That's how I approach it because there's too much in there, right? You're trying to do all of the parenting role. This is my take on it. And that, we should be looking for mentors for our children, right? So that, and by we like when our children are 5 and they don't know that that exists, there are mentors available that can be available to children. I think that mentorship is something that should not be feeling like it's a burden. It should be feeling like you're giving a gift. If there's a holiday and you give someone a gift and they open that gift and they say, "Oh, wow, that was just what I wanted." How do you feel? You feel amazing, right? And if you go to give a gift to somebody and they're like, I don't need a gift, you feel terrible, right? I think that mentorship should be that. And the matches that we're looking for that person who's going to be lighting up with what we're giving. Now, that mentee, that person could be saying, "Hey, I've been looking for this gift forever. Do you have it? And can I pick your brain about that and get some information, guidance, and advice and all of that?" And that's going to have that same feeling. Or it can be that you're saying, "Hey, I see that you could use some assistance. Maybe can I give you some advice here?" And that could also be that opportunity, but it should not have attached to it a feeling of burden or a feeling of it's being sort of I'm being held up, that I must give this. It's really we're giving the most precious thing, which is a piece of ourselves, to somebody else. And that's how we should be looking at it.
It's funny. It's like you and Rap. You were just like, because he says, I agree with Deborah. A gift should always be given without expecting a return. So, but when you
Yay.
talk about kids, yeah, I mean, it's true. But kids in the 5 year olds, they learn more from their peers, which are the 5 year olds. But we as a grown up, we try to, okay, the reason for you don't put your hand in the fire is because then you burn and then you can blah blah blah. So there is another things about it, but and we that's how mentoring is. But as we talked about in the beginning, you wrote this book called The Mentorship Edge. So tell us a little bit about what drove you to, is this a part of your PhD, or is it
No.
like why did you write a book?
Well, I started to write the book in about 2015, and I was kind of shopping the idea around, and that's kind of when the term mentorship was starting to be seen out in mentoring programs had been around, or the term, but nobody was really hot for that. They were like, "Who wants to know about mentorship?" So it wasn't really a big thing. And shortly after we started to really, this was when I was interviewing a lot of mentors and seeing that people were really moved by being mentors, utterly moved by it. And I started to realize that mentorship was bigger than what we had thought. All of the tech boom, the tech all of that was mentorship. That was lateral mentorship, which I'll talk about in a second if you want, but it's a different form of mentorship that no one was talking about. So I really wanted to get the stories of these mentors out. And then Wiley approached me, I think in 2023, and said, "Would I like to write a book?" And it didn't happen at that very moment. And in 2024, that's when I said, "Yeah, we signed the agreement and we did this." But I really, at this point, wanted to get out the information in a way that was allowing people to see that mentorship is a defined thing. It isn't just a happenstance thing where you go and you're like, "Hey, you got some information for me? Great. I'm going to go pick a tree, pick off the trees of information to show what it is, what it isn't, and how we're built to do it." And we are all mentors all the time. We just don't realize it. And when we don't realize it, we don't get to have that really good feeling and like, wow, I left a mark in the world. So the book shows so many different ways how mentorship can save your life, literally. There is a story of Charlie Camarda, who was an astronaut in space, and his lateral mentor saved his mission. They got home safely due to mentorship. How Bob Lefkowitz, who is the 2012 Nobel Prize winner in chemistry, created a legacy tree to show how he was connected in so many different ways. He was like, how did I become a mentor? Mentor. How did I become the Nobel laureate? What's special about me? So he found all of his mentors and made what would be like an ancestry.com sort of a tree, but with his mentors.
Yeah.
And the story that was so compelling with him was that he went to a conference not long after that was published, and somebody came up to him and said, "Hey, I'm 6 degrees Lefkowitz." And he was like, "What do you mean?" And that person came to him and said, "I've been doing work in this area, and there are 5 people between you and me." And he started to tell him about the work, and Bob was able to hear his words and his work in this person that he'd never met before, who was 6 degrees away from him. And we have that all the time in our lives. And we think of mentorship as having a start and an end with an interaction with somebody. And that's never how it is. It's much bigger and deeper than that. And so this shows how the book shows all of that. It defines, and gives what coaching is versus mentoring, and how we should have them all. We should be networking. We should be doing all these things, but also we should be looking laterally, look to your left, look to your right. That person next to you is either a mentor or mentee in some way, probably.
And also, like when the examples I'm reading off from Amazon is like when Steve Jobs asked
Yeah.
Steve Wozniak for engineering help when he was at Atari. And that is also, why is it so enriched in us? What's in it for me? It has been following us all the way. Like, why should you share something with me if I then get money from it? Or whatever, like how is it, because you're teaching and you have the young ones, and because I believe in that, the young people, they have to like soak in what we have, and like how the importance of or the rewards, like now I sounded like it come from the harbor, like, but there are some benefits, like you were mentioning the Nobel literate, like we never know who inspire us
Yeah. But we can
to
be more
take
mindful
action.
of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we're more mindful of that. So, I've talked to so many people, and they'll say, I've never mentored anyone. I've never been a mentor. And then, but that's not true. Or they'll say, I've never had a mentor. First of all, nobody's ever gotten anywhere without a mentor. And if you enter any house of worship, that's mentorship. If you go and do any holiday tradition, any values that you say you hold dear to you, you've been mentored. You didn't just come up with it on your own. But if we start to look outside of all of that as well, in terms of mentoring, it's that we're not acknowledging when we help somebody. So here's an example, and you gave it with the Steve Wozniak. Now, Steve Jobs was at work and his boss gave him an impossible task. And he was like, I got it. Don't worry about it. And his boss said, hey, you're not making progress after a couple of days. And he was like, don't worry, I got it. He didn't have it. How often have we been at work or in a situation where we're like, I don't have it, but I'm not telling my boss I don't have it. That's not going to work out well. You don't have that trust level, right? And so you don't want to be vulnerable. So what did he do? He did what all of us do. He called his friend. He said, hey, Steve, I got this problem. I know you know this kind of engineering that I don't know. Do you mind walking me through it? So Steve said, hey, I'll meet you after work. And he went after work and he helped him. It was kind of like Rumpelstiltskin. Every night, they were weaving wheat into gold. And this project got done with no one knowing that Steve Wozniak was coming in at night. But in the end, the job got done quicker than it was supposed to. As you mentioned, it was Atari. His boss was Al Alcorn, who's considered the grandfather of video games. And that project they were working on was Breakout, the first video game. So Steve just thought, I'm calling my friend Steve for help. And Steve thought he was just helping his friend. That was mentorship. That was lateral mentorship. What was the outcome of that? It changed the trajectory of the world and how we see things. If you played a video game, say, hey, thanks, Steve. Thanks, lateral mentoring. That's how it works, but it feels so intuitive. Steve didn't do it so that he could get or Steve Wozniak didn't do it for a reward. And Steve Jobs wasn't trying to swindle his friend into helping him. It was that we do that. We feel good when we help a friend. If somebody calls and says, oh my gosh, I need your help, you go and help because you want to. And that's kind of how mentorship is. But we haven't defined it that way for our personal lives. And so we often don't see those moments that we've either made impact or that have impacted us.
But back to, because now Rap, he asked, like, would you call training education a level of mentoring? Like, I would
No.
say yes. Well, I would say yes, because like when my daughter started her journey into criminology, in the beginning, she doesn't know anything. But at the end, she is, and you can see the confidence grow and stuff. And whenever you start a new work, like you get confidence. But of course, because you mentioned it before, that if you're getting paid for it, then it's not mentoring.
Let me give you an example, if you don't mind, because this
Yeah.
is asked all the time. And I do have this in the book too, how it works out. Look, I go into my class every day and I'm like, how many of you would come in if I didn't take attendance? And they're like, I would not be here. And, like, how many of you would come in or do the work if you had no grade? And none of them would. And that's normal. Now, am I educating them? Yes. Am I their mentor? No, I am their professor. Now, do I sometimes become their mentor? Yes. There are some students who, after the class or an outside school time, will get mentored. Now, they are getting educated in my class, but the mentorship happens outside. So, an example that I give in the book is Professor Weinberger is a professor in a PhD program of psychology in the New York area. And he has his students who he is paid to advise. He has to advise them. That is part of his job. He has to guide them into what classes they should take, what they should be doing, where they should be going. That is his job. He is not a mentor. He's an advisor. Now, some of those, not all, will end up becoming his mentees. In one case, a student, Dr. Weinberger said, hey, would you like to co-author a book with me? You are really good in this area. I'm an expert in this. I would like to mentor you in how to write a book. They co-authored a book together, and that was him mentoring her. So if you say that mentorship is embodied in coaching or education or training, you are devaluing both mentoring and the educational process. Teachers are teachers and should be valued. Trainers are trainers and they should be valued. And coaches are coaches and should be valued. You want a coach? Get a coach. You want a mentor? Get a mentor. But don't say you do both at the same exact time, because it's devaluing both. And it's making a person think they don't need a mentor if they just have a teacher or if they just have one of those. We should have ourselves surrounded. We should be like a spider web of connections of every single one of those, so that we're not saying, I just have one, I'm good to go.
I had a math teacher, and although she was a great math teacher, but I thought, and I was in awe, because I want to be like her. Like,
Yeah.
she was so inspiring to me, and whenever I thought, like, I wanted to be a teacher, but then I turned into like social educator because I thought I had more to give there. But how, like, because you mentioned the young ones, like they. Is Joe here? Like, if they just want to get out. But
Yeah.
after you have been with them for a period of time, do you see a shift in them? In, like, how do they perceive it? Do they perceive it
Yes.
still as a curriculum, or do they say, "Oh, Professor Heiser, you are the best. and you give the thumb up or whatever, right? Like, how do you know when you have weaved yourself into their brains and said, she got it?
Well, as a professor, I can tell oftentimes if they're getting it because of the extrinsically motivated activities that I make them do, like their tests and their papers, or how they participate in class. When I think that I really have a meaningful connection with them and might become a mentor to them is when they hit me up after class and they're like, I want more. I want more than what you gave. Can you give me more than that? Or can I ask you, this sort of a thing about, my life or where I should go or what I should do? That's separate. There could be a bunch of students in the class who are like, I'm going to do what I have to do. And I don't really feel meaningfully connected to her, but I'm going to get
Yeah.
educated. They can still reach their educational goal and not feel meaningfully connected to me. So that's the difference with mentorship and education.
But how is it? Because I noticed that you have something called the mentor post. Okay, time is getting dinner time. Mentorproject.org, like where you and some colleagues, like, can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what is it and how does it work?
So
Or
we
like,
have,
yeah.
if this is free for students in anywhere in the world and from kindergarten through graduate school. So it doesn't matter about age. It matters, are you a student? And what we have is the top 1% in their field, from astronaut like Charlie Camarda, who I mentioned, to artists who are available to mentor students either online, or we do panels, or when we can, it's in person. But because we're global, it's more often online. So what happens is we have everybody's sort of expertise out there for people to see. And if a person is looking for a specific kind of mentorship, they can say, I'd like to speak with, say, Justin or Charlie or Bill or whoever is out there, because they have the information I'm looking for. Now, all the mentors have said, here's what I am good at and like this is what I'd like to give back. And so they can go through and look at that. Now, we also do try to hook them up with somebody completely outside of their range so that they can meet as many different mentors as possible, because really we should be connecting with as many people as possible. You should not be saying, I have a mentor, I'm going to set it and forget it, because we should have mentors all over the place. So last year in 2024, we gave out $3 million of free mentoring hours to students in 5 countries. We really have seen that this works really well, that we can, and we're about 5 years old. We've really exploded in our growth. So that's how we work. We're available for free. So if a student is listening to this and says, I want a mentor, click the Become a Mentee button, fill out the form, and off you go. You'll get a mentor. It's really, to me, exciting to know that the Mentor Project is a real life embodiment of showing that theory that was posed by Eric Erikson, generativity, actually works, and it is something that is proven to work.
Okay. I don't know what happened, but you froze and you were in the midst of talking about the 3 million hours of, so I have to look at it, but I'm in awe. And can people just sign up or do
Yes, it's
they?
free. It was $3 million of mentorship
Oh,
hours
I
in
meant, yeah,
5
yeah, yeah, yeah,
countries.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And yes, click the Become a Mentee button on the website, fill out the form, and you can get a mentor that has something likely that you are hoping to receive. They are the gift holder of the gift that you want.
Oh, this is so brilliant. I knew you would give me something. Like, I knew that I would, like, instantly remember when we talked, the pre-chat before we talked, like, you're brilliant.
I think that
Nothing
we're
but brilliant.
showing here that honestly the emotional trajectory in life is actually, it works and it's real. We've been able to prove that the emotional trajectory of our lives, our desire to give back, is real. And so that's not brilliance on my end. That is just pretty cool world wisdom that's out there.
And it is also like we don't because you said that it's not like I'm going into your world and say, oh, I love you, you have to be, but it's more of reach out to people,
Yeah.
talk to them, and see what have they. It's something like when I was just talking to your fellow American yesterday. I was talking about I think we here in Europe tend to say, oh, who are you? You are interesting. And then we decide if you are, what kind of person you are. But then in the US, it's more of, who are you? Why are you here? Are you
Yeah.
going to hit me? Are you like,
Yes.
be curious, be
Exactly.
interested in the person.
Good point. Good
And
point.
just like kids out there, just look for and be inspired.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I was talking to a young guy last week, Eric Simpson from Seattle. He moved over to US and I to the UK. Never been like, and I was just like, and you chose Liverpool, like as a city to live in? I have never been to Liverpool, but that is because of soccer reasons. But it's just how, if you experience, then you are broadening your mind.
Yeah.
Take 5 minutes to watch the birds or the ducks in the pond and like, oh, what are they doing now? Oh, I have to close my eyes or whatever. Broaden your horizon. But Deborah, it's just like you have your own website, deborahheiser.com. And your book, it's called the Mentorship Edge. And you can buy that on Amazon and where not or whatnot. And just, you are brilliant. You know that. In my mind, you're brilliant. Because, but everybody who has who wants to talk to me is brilliant.
There you go. It's you. It's you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's you.
But I just like from the bottom of my heart, like even though it took us a while to get, that's like for the 2.0. So, but your job is meaningful. People visit, like go to the mentorproject.org and look at it. And it's just give yourself, like give something off you or offer it. And the rewards will be enormous. Like this lady, like just the story, it's just like, still it gives me the chills. So just thank you. Give my best to your students and tell them from Iceland that they should live a little.
I will tell them
Take
that.
chances. Thank you. And
Thank
thank
you.
you very much for this conversation. So I will end this now. Thank you very much.